What if I told you Roald Dahl didn't write Matilda? Matilda did. She could read nearly as soon as she could talk, so no one was surprised when she grew up to become an author. Believe with me for a moment that she tried several times to write an autobiography, but it was too painful to share. So instead, she created Roald Dahl, wrote his autobiographies, Boy and Going Solo, which of course were realistic fiction. Next, she tried to reach out to her younger self with stories of villains vanquished by children. Stories with lots of funny bits, like children's books ought to have. But when a boy came over for tea from what she would later call Crunchem Hall Primary School, she realized children needed to hear her story. She decided to write fictionalized reality. The head teacher, who tested students on their times tables and insisted on perfect cleanliness, would be called Miss Trunchbull. Yes, people would be caricatures with labels for names like Miss Honey, the teacher, and Mr. Wormwood, the car salesman crook. The kid readers would never wonder who was bad or good, because Miss Trunchbull would never put on charity fairs or give scholarships, and the parents would be nasty and dumb. The horror of the head teacher's office would not be rumors of what he did to little boys there. It would be something concrete, a cement cupboard lined with objects that pricked you. Since teachers couldn't stop the menace, Matilda's anger would become a magic power. She would save the children and send Miss Trunchbull away for good. Of course, in real life there was no magic. Just because Matilda could read the books on the top shelf didn't mean she could reach them. Even as the cleverest student in the class, Matilda's brain power produced no miracles or cunning plots, only test scores that made Crunchem Hall look good and a tendency to distrust her feelings. No matter how Matilda's eyes burned with anger, she couldn't lift a finger, much less levitate a piece of chalk to write threats from a ghost. But write. Maybe Matilda could write words powerful enough to right wrongs. Miss Trunchbull got away with outrageous evil precisely because parents found it unbelievable. Truth is stranger than fiction, Matilda learned. So call it a story if you want people to listen. Peddle light-hearted darkness. Yes, she could write a comedy where everything was obvious and the vulnerable were protected by mysterious forces beyond their control. She could write it for the children, perhaps not an autobiography, but it was what she would have wanted to hear. She hoped that some precocious child who escaped to the library would find her book on the shelf, would laugh at Matilda's pranks, would know that justice wins in the end. What if Matilda could save some kids yet? Invite them to believe something so strange it might be true. That life is a comedy, that children's books always have a happy ending. Or in that case, what if Matilda wouldn't have to save them? Characters are not responsible for meting out poetic justice. The author of the children's stories would give them happy endings. Mysterious forces protect the vulnerable, and God's in the business of saving, I hear. What if I told you the story isn't over yet, but I know it will end well? What if I told you the truest fiction I know how? Would you believe me?